Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Stunning Steve Barber. And for those of you watching on YouTube, you already see I have a guest, and I'm very, very excited about this. I have Duke from Duke Loves Rasslin. How you doing, sir?
Another day in paradise. First of all, Steve, it is an honor to be on your show, brother. I really appreciate you having me on.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. Thank you so much for coming on. It really, because your show has been going on for a few years, and I just discovered it recently because even the shows that have been out for a while, we don't always hear about it until somebody sent it to me, and I was like, oh, um, and I was like, so I've been listening to some of the episodes, and I really like what I'm hearing, and so I reached out to you because of some things that have happened on your show, and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and since then, we've stayed in touch, and so I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, man, my pleasure. You're a great guy, and certainly, pro wrestling it can bring people from all over the world together for this common bond. You know what
Uh,
I mean? So
yes,
it's
sir.
always a pleasure to meet different folks and meeting you. You're a great guy. So this is awesome. Let's do it, brother.
I appreciate it. So just go ahead and tell everybody about you because you're the first time on this show. And one of the things that has been discovered with podcasts is not everybody makes it to the end. And so if there's any way people can know about how to find your show, whether it be YouTube, whether it be audio, everything, how to get hold of you, go ahead and say that now. So that way it's at the beginning so they can hear it.
Absolutely. Well, Duke Loves Rasslin Podcast, we're about to celebrate the 8th year anniversary of the show. You can find us on all of the major podcast platforms, a.k.a. Spotify, Apple. You can find us on YouTube, although it's not a video show. And I want to make that clear. This is an audio show. So if you watch us on YouTube, you'll see photos and things like that. But the main idea is I interview everyone from the legends, kids who are just breaking into the wrestling business, everyone in between, and of course, passionate fans as well. So certainly check us out. You will love it. You can also find me on all your social medias at Duke Loves Rasslin, Rasslin. You see the spelling down there. Check it out, man. But like I said, 8 years. It's not easy to put out something every single week for 8 years straight, but that's what we do. You know what I mean? And it's because we have great listeners and folks are discovering us every single day, just like yourself, just like you did, Steve. So I'm truly blessed and honored, and we ain't stopping anytime soon, brother.
Yes, sir. And I'm glad to be part of it. I'd love to come on your
Yes,
show.
sir.
You've also mentioned to me you have other shows as well
Yep.
that
Yep.
aren't wrestling. Just like I have my own the cubicle chat, which I talk about other things besides wrestling.
Yes, sir.
Because sometimes you just got to. All right, let me break off. you know,
Well, there's a
um,
lot going on in life, right?
oh
So
yeah,
so why not?
and
Yeah.
and I used to be known as like at my work before I left there. They were calling me the wrestling podcast guy.
Yep.
Which was fine, but I'm like I can talk about other things besides just wrestling.
Sure.
Even though I love wrestling, obviously, I wouldn't have started the podcast. But what are some of the other podcasts that you have going on?
Well, I have Tell Us the Truth, which is in partnership with iHeartRadio. So it's a show where I peel back the layers and really dig deep into what's going on in society in general. So, educators, elected officials, everyday walks of life folks, what's happening in life and what do you want to share with the world? So it's a pretty cool show. It's been around for about we're coming up on our 4 year anniversary of that show.
Mhm.
So, definitely folks can check out Tell Us the Truth again on all your major podcast outlets there, like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, of course, the iHeartRadio app. It's a great listen. And I mean, Pulitzer Prize winning authors and folks like that. You'd be very surprised at the
Oh,
conversations that you'll
nice.
heir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you know some people, so
Including you, including
including me.
Steve
I
Barber.
mean,
Got that
uh,
right.
hey, I try. You know, maybe one day I'll be famous. We'll see.
Well,
And then I'll get the gig. Like at the fan fest that and we will definitely be talking about a particular fan fest.
mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
like I told one of the people I was there, with. That I was actually helping out. I was like, man, I said, I need to get this gig, where I need to get famous and then go to there and just charge people 20, $30 to sign a piece of paper or a picture. There you go. And just
Hey,
do that all day,
why not?
yeah.
Why
so,
not? You know,
but before we actually talk about the fan fest in particular, I want to get your thoughts on WrestleMania that just happened this past weekend. What'd you think?
I thought it was awesome. I
Yeah.
really, first of all, I enjoy the 2 night affair. You know what I mean? I can't get enough pro wrestling in life. I grew up watching pro wrestling my whole life. So 2 nights of a mega event, why not, man? It was a spectacle. matches from people from all over the world. The place
Yeah.
was packed, and it's something to care about. I clear out my whole schedule, and I even take that Monday off as well every single year. No matter where I'm at, it's in my contract. The Monday after WrestleMania, I am not coming in. You know what I mean? I'm taking
Right.
that day off so I can really just enjoy it and really reflect on all the years that this has happened. It's really a tradition. So, and this year delivered, man, 100% for me.
Oh yeah, both nights, and
Yeah.
because there's been ever since they've gone to the 2 night format, which I get the first time they did it was out of necessity, but they've kept it because it's work. Not this way, they're not having this 7, 8 hour long event.
Yeah. That's too much.
That
That's
is
too much.
way
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah.
So they split
No.
it up, but a couple times it's been like one night's been great, and the next night, hasn't been. This time I thought both nights delivered,
Yes.
and they delivered very well.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
a lot of title changes that actually made sense.
Yep.
Finally got to see Damian Priest cash in, and been waiting to see that. And of course, and it keeps that going with Drew McIntyre saying, "Well, I've been screwed over." Well, now it's keeping that long term storyline going, which I'm so glad.
Exactly.
Paul Levesque. I mean, you could definitely tell he's in charge now because he's a wrestler, and so he writes the stories from the viewpoint of a wrestler, not somebody else who's like, "Well, I'm going to tell the fans what they want." No, they told you what they wanted. And there's actually, I haven't watched it yet, but apparently they have a documentary that shows like behind the scenes of WrestleMania, how it all came together.
Oh,
Yeah, and how they advertised part of it during I thought they were advertising during WrestleMania, but it's they're showing how well the fans reacted very negatively when Cody said, "Well, I'm not going to go against Roman at WrestleMania." Well, people were getting mad at The Rock, and so they turned him organically. They're like, you know what? Let's just do it. And it worked, and it worked really, really well.
hmm
And um and I thought the payoff is and it's still kind of going, thankfully, because that's the way you want it. I mean, it's not like wrestling just stops and okay, let's go. No, it's still going, and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, same
So
here. Same
yeah,
here. Absolutely. I thought it was great. Obviously, you have some matches that you like more than others, but
right,
overall, it was a great event and a great family friendly event, which is what I
yeah,
love the most as well. You know what I mean?
um,
Something for everybody.
yeah. For the most part, the Rock dropping F-bombs, I was like, oh, did he just
Sure.
did he just say that? I
Sure.
was like, all right, got to tell him, hey, dude, this ain't the attitude era anymore.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, but you've had a lot of guests on your show.
Mhm.
I've had a few. I mean, I've had Larry Zbyszko, I've had Buff Bagwell, I've had Wildcat Chris Harris on a couple times. But you've had a lot of people, including, and I'll go ahead and mention the last couple ones that you had because this is really how we ended up getting in contact with each other. You had Devon Dudley, and he had some things to say about that fan fest in Chillicothe, and then you had Jimmy Hines, also known as Bobby Fulton, and his son Dillon on to kind of rebut what Devon said. And then there's been some other things that have come out of that interview. So go ahead and give us, your timeline of events, how that all happened.
Well, Devon Dudley, shout out to him. He's a Hall of Famer.
Yes,
He
sir.
and the and Bubba, they just signed a new Legends deal with WWE, which is
Really? Okay.
fantastic.
Awesome.
So
I didn't
so
know
they
that.
have a
That is
yeah, so
good.
they have a whole new line of merchandise coming out and things like that. There was a special on A&E, WWE Rivals. It was the Dudley Boys versus Edge and Christian versus the Hardy Boys. So all of these things are happening at the same time, and Devon and his team wanted to promote that. WWE wanted to get him out and do some media. So I was contacted and we worked it out and what have you. And also, Devon's going to be at the River City Wrestling Con, and those are friends of ours. So we always make time for anybody who's going to be showing up there. So it was a perfect storm of coming on the show. But I had heard about an incident that Devon had gone through with some guy named Dillon Hines. And I'm not really all that familiar with Dillon. I think I only spoke to him maybe once or twice before that, just in passing. So I said, okay, well, Devon, what's this thing about something happening where some guy got into some kind of altercation? And he said, oh, we can talk about that. I said, okay, all right, great. So we went through the interview, and the interview was about Devon's great career. He's a Hall of Famer. He's one of the most accomplished wrestlers in the history of pro wrestling. He's one of the most accomplished black wrestlers in the history of pro wrestling. There are very few wrestlers in general who have won as many titles as Devon Dudley. He's won tag team titles all over the world, right?
Yes,
So the
sir.
conversation was about that. when I asked him what happened at an event, he relayed the information. And essentially, Dillon was being rude. That was Devon's take. He was being rude, and he wasn't going to put up with it. And Bobby eventually stepped in and told Dillon to leave because clearly Dillon was being rude. Like, there was no question about that portion of the sequence of events. Everything Devon said, I had already heard from other people who attended. So it made sense, right? So I put it up, no problem. Now, I had spoken to Dillon, and I told him, I said, look, anyone who's mentioned on Duke Loves Rasslin is welcome to come on the show and defend themselves. I don't have a problem with that. You know what I mean? Because there were some things that were said. So if you want to come on and defend yourself, you're welcome to do that. And Dillon said, okay, no problem. That Sunday, he calls me up. I need to come on your show, and I want to do it right now. And I'm like, well, I'm not recording right now. I'm with my family, and, it's Sunday. I'm taking it easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
He said, no, I got my father here. We need to do it now. So, my lady was on the couch relaxing, and she could hear the conversation. And she said, well, why don't you just do it? Just get it out of the way, because this guy sounds like he's really upset. And I said, all right, give me 10 minutes. Let me get set up and we'll do it. Well, Dillon says, well, no, before you hang up the phone, you need to listen to this. And he reads off a statement. So he had a prepared statement that he read before I even hit record. I wasn't even ready to record. And he gave me that. I'm like, okay, Dillon, but we're not recording yet. So it doesn't matter if you tell me your statement. Why don't you wait until I'm set up and we record, and then you can say whatever you want to the whole world, right? So, but he insisted on that. And I said, all right, this guy's a little high strung, no problem. 10 minutes later, I send him the link. He jumps on, him and his father. Bobby's there, Bobby Fulton from the Fantastics. Never spoke to him before in my life. So this is the first time Bobby and I are interacting. And I grew up watching the Fantastics. So it's all right, this is cool. Another legend on the show, no problem. Well, Bobby told me before we started recording that he was going to do most of the talking. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird, because the conflict is with Dillon, not with Bobby. So, but okay, so you're going to protect your son by speaking on his behalf. All right, it is what it is. So we hit record, and Bobby starts talking. Then Dillon reads his statement, and then Bobby jumps back in, and we have this, I'm not going to call it a conversation, because Bobby just kept talking and talking and talking. He was filibustering, basically, right?
That's a very good way to put it, too. Didn't even think about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He wanted to control the narrative, and he was spinning it the way that he was spinning it. Devon shouldn't have said this, and there's a misunderstanding, and the agents were wrong, all this stuff, which is okay. That's your perspective. So I said, okay, great. Now I want to hear from Dillon, because the conflict is with him. And Bobby kept steering it away from Dillon. Even when Dillon was trying to speak, Bobby would take the phone back, and he would start going again and going again and going again. So if you listen to the interview, I would say probably the first 15 minutes or so is just Bobby going, just rattling stuff off over and over and over, right?
Yep.
And within that, he's calling me a bottom feeder. He's calling me Jerry Springer. He's telling me he doesn't do podcasts, he doesn't respect it, and yada, yada, yada. So I'm being insulted while this guy is trying to convince the world that everyone is jealous of his son. His son did nothing wrong. Maybe he's a little hot-headed, and maybe this, and maybe, so he's also contradicting himself. And I think the problem was with Bobby contradicting himself, Dillon was getting pissed off. Because from Dillon's perspective, he needed to defend himself because he didn't feel his father was doing an efficient job, right? So Bobby feels like he said enough, and then he says, I'm stopping this thing now because we shouldn't even be doing it. And that pissed Dillon off. So you can actually hear Dillon in the background saying, no, I want to talk to him. I want to talk to him. And I had to tell him, I said, Bobby, if Dillon wants to talk, he's an adult. You got to let him talk. So they asked me, well, who else has a problem with me? And I said, well, that's a good question, because there are a lot of people who are posting as we're recording. And I just went on to my Facebook and I started reading messages from people that were on my page publicly, right? People talking about Dillon and their interactions with him, and they were not positive. And when I would start to read, I would say the person's name and start to read, and Dillon would say, I know who that is. I'll tell you what his problem is. You don't need to say what he says. So he wouldn't let me actually recite their perspective on him, right? So he did it to me, I think, 2 times. And then finally I got one in. And then Bobby jumps in and he's running people down. But what was interesting is I mentioned the name Ken Jugan.
Right.
I said Ken Jugan. And I don't know what the hell happened there. That was like the magic word. Pissed Bobby off, pissed Dillon off, and they just really started getting upset. I also mentioned forging Lex Luger's signature. And that was another thing where Bobby started cussing and carrying on, and everything got flipped upside down after that. Now, if you folks go and you listen to that interview, there is a part of it that I edited out.
Yep.
Because in the process of Bobby going crazy, talking about how terrible everyone who's talking about Dillon is, Bobby wanted to shut it down. Dillon didn't want to shut it down. And then finally, they had an altercation with each other, right? So the altercation happens, and it was long. It was almost 10 minutes long of an altercation between the two of them, right?
Right.
So it happened, and they came, and I said, "Hey, you guys all right? Like, what's going on here?" And they said, "Hey, take that off. We don't want to air that," and yada yada yada. And I said, "Well, I'm not going to air it as part of this episode, but you guys, this is getting ridiculous here. Basically, you're disrespecting me. You're disrespecting each other, and I don't know what's going on here. It didn't sound like whatever just happened was a positive thing either between the two of you." But we steered the conversation back to finish the conversation. Bobby said he was going to leave. He still ended up sticking around. Dillon did more talking. He called me a liar, which was very interesting. I'm a liar because I'm reciting what other people are saying about Dillon. They're talking about their experience.
You're just the messenger here.
Literally. But I'm a liar.
Yeah.
Right? And I told him, I said, people say that they only do business with you because your father. They love Bobby Fulton. They don't have time for Dillon Hines because Dillon Hines is not professional. And Dillon said, you're a liar. And okay. But that's what people are saying, and it's public. So we air that episode. And Bobby Fulton went on the defensive right away, running me down about that episode, which is just the two of them carrying on and what have you, right? But then more people started sending messages publicly and privately telling me about witnessing Bobby Fulton being abused by Dillon and being cussed out by Dillon and being concerned about that. And I said, well, damn, this is actually a pattern. So, I had to get with some of my folks from a legal perspective and figure out what to do here, because the part that I edited out is pretty bad.
Oh yeah. Because I've heard it, and
you've heard it.
Yeah.
So
I was absolutely appalled when I was listening to that.
So once I was pretty clear that I can't sit on this because of the nature of what it is. I mean, legitimately, somebody's life might be in danger, right? So I here's the behind the scenes on that. I tried to find out where Bobby actually is because I wanted to have a wellness check done. And unfortunately, no one seemed to know a clear address for him. They couldn't even tell me specifically what city. They had old information, but they didn't have current information. And after, that took a little time, and it's like, I can't continue to sit on this because, time is of the essence. If something happens to Bobby, and I have this information, what does that say about me? That might actually even put me in a situation here from a legal perspective. So I said, you know what? I'm putting it out. So I did a short episode. I explained why I'm putting it out, and I aired the part that did not originally air. And again, this is at least 7 minutes. It's over 7 minutes of Dillon berating Bobby. He told him that he's nothing ever since he got cancer. He threatened to whoop his you-know-what. It sounded like there was some kind of physical contact that happened. Is it possible that somebody slapped somebody? It sure sounds like it. A lot was going on. And again, this went on. Listen, the average fight out there, if you see two people fight, it doesn't last more than 30 seconds to a minute, right? It's in and it's out. This is over 7 minutes of God knows what, right? And Bobby, and Bobby says, only me and you in here. Do it. Like he's trying to stand up for himself. But Dillon is just running him down in a manner that is, quite frankly, in my opinion, horrific. To speak to your parent that way, to threaten them, to tell them that they're nothing, all of this stuff. And then Bobby lets Dillon know, look, you shouldn't even do the interview in the first place. Nobody wants to work with you. Sting doesn't want to work with you. The guys don't want to work with you because of your attitude. And I've been keeping this from you because I didn't want to hurt your feelings, but it's true. And now you're coming on this podcast and you're proving them right. This is all being recorded. Now, listen, Steve, at no time did these guys mute anything.
They sure don't.
Did they
Very
don't.
good point. They don't mute anything.
They don't mute anything. They know that we're in the middle of an interview. So it's not like they don't know that they're being recorded too. So the rage and the nature of what's going on with the two of them, the volatility of it all is so uncontrollable that in the middle of a recorded interview that the world is going to hear, and they knew about my show beforehand. They know people listen to my show because of the Devon episode. If they knew nothing else, they knew that episode struck a nerve because they heard it and they felt like they needed to speak to it, right? So the fact that they couldn't even control themselves to do the interview and they're already fighting with each other and Dillon being the main aggressor, that was concerning. So I put it out, and now, Bobby, I'm a bottom feeder. I'm Jerry Springer, and how dare I say he's elderly? So he's going on the defensive, trying to defend himself after the fact, because quite frankly, what we hear sounds like elder abuse from Dillon being committed on Bobby.
It's horrible. I mean,
yeah. And I encourage people, go back and listen to it. It's all, Duke Loves Rasslin archives there. It's bad. And I think the name of the episode is, did Dillon Hines abuse Bobby Fulton?
Something I got to my text messages because I've some of the people
you probably have it right there.
Yeah. Let me see, because they're one of the many people that I actually sent it to, but I did tell people, I was like, listen to the Devon episode first, so you have everything.
Sure.
Context.
So you understand. Yeah.
Yep. It's week 443. Is Dillon Hines abusing Bobby Fulton? That's the name of the episode.
So I want to make something clear. I'm asking a question. I'm not trying to tell anyone to believe one thing or another. I'm asking a question and I'm providing the information. So you as a listener, you go and you listen to it and you tell me what you think. You know what I mean? That's how it's presented. Because Dillon, and I'll reveal this is the first time I'm revealing this anywhere in public. Dillon actually first of all, Bobby called me and he demanded that I take it down. And I told him I can't do that. I said, Bobby, there's a lot of us, not just me. There's a lot of us, people who know you, who've known you for decades, are concerned about you, man. Something's going on. This is not the first time that Dillon has done this. There are other people who are putting out public statements saying they've witnessed this. So I had to put it out. And Bobby said, in 50 years is the worst thing that's ever been done to me. And I said to him, well, Bobby, not Dillon abusing you. In 50 years, me airing the abuse is the worst thing that happened to you. And Bobby said, yes, you airing it. Now, listen, Bobby didn't say that he wasn't being abused when he responded to me.
He sure didn't.
So he's acknowledging it, right? But okay, so that's that. 5 minutes later, Dillon calls me. And he says, I'm going to get my attorney. And I said, Dillon, that's the magic word. Once you say attorney, there's nothing for you and I to talk about anymore. So get your attorney, have them contact me, and they can talk to my attorney and they'll straighten it out. But you and I, we shouldn't be talking because we're going the other route now. And he says, no, I want to work it out. I said, well, what is there to work out? I thought you getting the attorney. What are we working out? Right? And he says, no, I want to work it out. So what do you want to work out? So then he said to me, I request you take it down. I said, well, your request is denied. You need to stop abusing your father. And he said, families fight and it's a misunderstanding. I said, there's no misunderstanding of what we heard you say, Dillon. And I don't think there's a misunderstanding of what we hear. It sounds like you did. Sounds like you hit the man. So we got a big problem here. And the world knows about it now. And you better know that you're on notice now. People are paying attention to you, Dillon, and the way that you're treating your father. Stop it. That's what I said to him. So he says, so you're not going to take it down? I said, no, I'm not taking it down. So he hung up the phone. So that was the end of that. Bobby puts up a statement and a video on Facebook and yada, yada, yada. Anyway, since then, Steve, and everyone listening out there, since then, Dillon Hines has been into at least 3 other separate situations. People witnessed him berating Bobby at another event. and folks had to step in on that. And then they post pictures and say, "Oh, nothing happened, and it's a rumor and it's not true." Come on, guys, you got eyewitnesses there. Another situation where Dillon Hines has a former WWE and current AEW wrestler out there selling shots of alcohol, which, as far as I understand, is not legal. I don't think they have a alcohol peddler's license, so
Not
they
at the
can't be
not at the
at
fan fest. They don't.
they can't be at no fan fest selling alcohol with autographs. So that's a whole legal situation that they don't put themselves in. And I'm just going to leave it at that. And I was told that Dillon was being inappropriate with a wrestler or a wrestling personality, female, and that person has threatened to get a restraining order and possibly go further. And I was told that somebody in defense of her had to step in, and they ended up roughing Dillon up. And Dillon crapped his pants as a result of getting roughed up. That's what I was told by multiple people who were there, eyewitnesses. And Dillon Hines, I dare you to contact that quote unquote attorney that you say you have, or, you say you're an attorney or studying or whatever the hell you're doing today. I dare you to bring this to a legal situation, because I got people that go on the record. That's one thing about me, brother. I don't play games when it comes to this. Okay. I got people that will go on the record, eyewitnesses, and I'm pretty sure there's video too. And I'm pretty sure the people who were affected most, especially the wrestlers, especially female wrestlers affected the most, pretty sure that they will testify to some of the things that happened that night too. So you can play games all you want, Dillon. Brother, you're a child, and you're talking to grown men. You should have never spoken to Devon Dudley the way that you did. You should have never spoken to any of the folks the way that you did. And you certainly don't want to speak to me the way that you have. So you better cool your jets. Bobby, I have nothing but respect for you. You're defending your son. You're defending your legacy. I'm going to overlook the way that you've disrespected me, because I understand at the end of the day, you are a survivor of something that, quite frankly, sounds like and seems like abuse, in my opinion. So I'm just going to leave it at that, Bobby. People love you. We want you to get help. We want you to be safe. Okay. But Dillon, you're playing the wrong game, brother, and you don't want to play that game over here. So he's having the worst month ever, Steve. And I know that was a long story, but that's where we're at.
Oh no, I mean it's sometimes the best stories. I mean, you have to have the details in there, because that
Yes,
way
sir.
people, that there's no questions later on. And I can tell you about my own experiences that I had in Chillicothe at this fan fest. And my friend and I, we actually talked about. We were actually going to do an episode talk about this before we actually went. After that, we're like, most of the experiences we had there were positive, because we did get to meet quite a few wrestlers. Including the ones we were more or less assigned to. Now we couldn't walk around and meet them. Now, a lot of times the wrestlers themselves were coming there greeting the people we were with.
So you were working. I want to make sure I'm clear on this. You
Yes,
were
I was
working the event. Yes,
because a friend of mine, don't want to say the name,
Yep.
It's a wrestler, actually got me and my buddy hooked up with this gig. Now, the only instructions that were passed along through our friend to us was make sure you just be there at 10:30. Didn't know where to go.
Yeah.
Just we didn't know, had no idea where to go. And then once we did figure out, people said, "Oh, we'll go around back there, that we think there's a door open." Okay, cool. We did. Still didn't know what we were doing. And so I saw Bobby Fulton, because this is actually the fifth one of these I've been to. And so I'd seen Bobby Fulton, or James Hines, Jimmy Hines, whatever. Whichever name, depending on what the situation is. Well, I saw him sitting there. It's like, oh, hello, we're sent by, so-and-so, you have our names. And then he's like, oh, you over there. And then he just lays into us. And as far as Bobby Fulton, the wrestler, yes, the Fantastics, we're a fantastic team, but our personal interactions with Bobby Fulton were not positive whatsoever. And I never actually interacted with Dillon. My friend did, and he said even that, and I don't want to go into details for him,
Sure.
But he said even his interactions with Dillon were also not positive. But I mean, and here are the
so
notes.
Hold on one
second.
The
notes
here,
that
Steve.
I have on that.
Hold on 1 second, Steve. Now let me just put something in perspective, because this reminds me of the conversation that we had initially, right?
Right.
And what is your career beyond, life over the past 10 years before that? What did you do?
I was in the Air Force, and my listeners, viewers, they know I was in the Air Force for 20 years. I retired 11 years ago as a master sergeant from the United States Air Force. I deployed to Afghanistan. I deployed to Kuwait. I did time in Korea. I was actually in intel, signals intel, but I mean that's but I've actually supervised a lot of people. I could actually show you the picture I have from me in Afghanistan, where I have the whole flight behind me. There's at least 70 people behind me. I was, they were working for me, and I was my job to take care of them.
Their
And so
lives.
that's what.
Their
Yes,
lives are in your
exactly,
hands, right?
exactly.
So,
And
folks, brothers and sisters, you have somebody who served honorably in the military, put his life on the line for our nation, had other lives he was responsible for all around the world, and all they were doing was not only trying to keep our freedom and our liberties here at home, but also the freedom and the liberties of our allies across the world as well. That's who Steve is. And you've been listening to this show long enough, even if it's the first time you've ever heard this guy before, you've been listening to this show long enough to understand where Steve is coming from and the kind of person he is and the kind of respect and honor and dignity that he carries on himself and he projects to the world, right? That's who he is. Now imagine he shows up at an event to work, to help, to contribute positively to something. Pro wrestling, right? And his first interaction is being yelled at and cussed at and pushed around by a guy who is basically treating you like you're nothing.
yeah, and see, I didn't even realize Dillon was the one running it until much later on. But I can tell you right now, my notes, like I said, I have a lot of notes on this.
A lot of notes.
Yeah. My first thing was very unorganized. And it was, you've heard that from Devon, you've heard that from other people. The instructions were almost non-existent. They gave me and my buddy envelopes, 2 envelopes apiece because we had 2 people, we were helping out. They had money and a letter. And Bobby said, "You better read that letter." And I hate doing the impression of him like that because I know it's a throat cancer that's actually causing his voice to be like that. But but that's what he was just yelling, "You better read that letter." And the letter, all it said was basically, "Here's $100 in this envelope." And that's for when people brought cash, they would have change. And if people come up and say they're part of a group, there's only these groups. If you need more change, come to Dillon or Jimmy Hines. It actually said, it didn't say Bobby, it actually said Jimmy Hines, which, that's the professional name. So, and then it said, make sure the wrestlers autograph the pictures. And that's going to come up even later. Make sure that if they don't want to, then come talk to the Hineses. I thought Bobby Fulton, he was very rude and disrespectful to us. I didn't have any personal interactions with Dillon that I'm aware of. I was never introduced to him, anything like that. And he never introduced himself to me or any of the other workers that I remember. We didn't have any relief or any kind of breaks. I stood there for 5 hours, just stood there. Part of my disability that I get from the VA is from my back and from my knees. So you can imagine me standing there for 5 hours was not doing, any good. It wasn't good for me to just stand there for that long. Before I finally handed my 2 envelopes to the 2 guys I was with, and I don't want to tell who I was with, just because I also don't want them to be sucked in, even though they probably wouldn't be, but I don't want them to be pulled in this as well. I said, I've got to go to the bathroom. I said, I need to eat something. I said, I'm diabetic. I need to eat something. And they're like, oh, go ahead. They were cool as can be. They were super awesome to work with, so I grabbed a couple of overpriced hot dogs, and then we weren't paid. That's the thing too. We were not paid for this. Yeah, we were not paid. And then once everything was over, of course, we didn't know what to do with these envelopes. They never had us sign in. They didn't even know our names. We could have just walked out with the money. But my buddy and I, that's just not who we are, But one of the things, about half an hour before it ended, Bobby comes walking up and he's like looking at all the tables. And my 2 guys had both happened to just walk off, at the same time, because they were able to go to bathroom breaks. They weren't holding the money. I was. I couldn't just, leave because I was the one with the money. But Bobby comes up and first he's like, "Where are they at?" And I'm like, I have no idea. And just them yelling at me like that, I'm like, all right. But I didn't tell him where he could go, even though I thought about it, because I didn't want to get my friend who actually hooked this up for me and my other buddy. I didn't want that person to feel any kind of negative repercussions from it.
Sure.
So and then he's like, "Have they signed their pictures?" Not that I'm aware of. He's like, we better make sure they sign him. I'm like, yeah, that's going to be me telling, the wrestler, who legitimately could beat me to a pulp. The conversation go, sign their pictures. No. All right.
I know. What are you going to do?
I mean, that was about it. I mean, so there was no accountability whatsoever they didn't care about the people who were there helping them literally for free because we did not get paid. They could say, well, you didn't have to pay to get in, but it's not like we were able to just walk around and actually experience the fan fest like, anybody else was. And even my buddy told me later on, we could have taken some black markers and drew an X on our hand, and then we could have just walked around, because, oh, did you pay? Yeah, right here. Here's the X. Look at it. A lot of the wrestlers weren't sure where they were being seated. We heard that from Devon too. Because, I saw that with Missy Hyatt when she walked in, because before the thing had started, my wrestler friend had actually texted me and said, hey, do you know where my table is? And so I had walked around and found that table. And close to that one I noticed was Missy Hyatt. So when Missy Hyatt, she's walking around on our side, and her table is all the way on the other side. I said, ma'am, your table's on that side. She's like, what? I'm like, yes. I said, it's actually on the other side, because she was looking at all the names, and she's like, it was on this side. What happened? I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. Then later on, after the fan fest part ended and they had to get the wrestling thing, because they had to pour the bleachers out and they had to get all the chairs set up. And well, Bobby at one point got so mad at somebody because they had like the wrong chair. He flung a steel chair. I mean, he flung it down on the ground. He was yelling. He was over there yelling at Ox Baker's family because Ox Baker. Yeah, I mean, and just the way he was acting was like, that's the same guy who we used to cheer for. Part of the Fantastics, and and I know that the having cancer, it's horrible. Because cancer is one of the most horrible diseases out there, and I know it has probably affected him.
Yeah, emotionally.
Yes, sir. Yeah. But still, I mean, to treat us like that, and then
no, unacceptable.
Right. And my buddy who was there with me, he said he had the same kind of experiences. Once again, they were asking him, you better make sure they sign them pictures. Because that was some kind of deal. And I actually, when I heard him, I was starting to put two and two together, because when we got there, the pictures were already on the tables. So the wrestlers didn't bring the pictures. They were provided by somebody else, but the wrestlers didn't have to pay the rent for those tables. But that's why they had to sign the pictures. But at the same time,
it wasn't communicated. It wasn't communicated.
Exactly. It wasn't communicated.
Right. Because Steve, if they're telling you that you need to communicate it to the wrestler, that means that they knew it wasn't communicated from the very beginning.
Right.
You shouldn't have to say anything to the wrestler. It should be in the contract. Right?
Exactly. It should
be
something.
The terms of you being in this event should be in whatever written agreement that you have. You shouldn't need some guy working the event to tell you to sign anything.
Exactly.
So here we have with the lack of organization, like you said, like Devon said, like your friend is talking about. Whose fault is that? You know what I mean? But you don't need to be rude about it. If it's a misunderstanding, if you screwed up and you forgot to cover that detail, then you find a way to work it out. But you don't need to be rude to people. And Bobby talking to you that way, no wonder his son carries on the way that he does.
Right. And, and I'm not going to defend how Dillon treats his dad, because Bobby, I mean, just to be blunt, I mean, and this is maybe kind of family unfriendly, but Bobby, he was a raging prick to both, me and a lot of other people, including my other buddy. And I never even met Dillon. And it's not like they were going, yes, they were checking on the wrestlers. Hey, you need water. You need water. In fact, at my table, they left one water bottle. There was two wrestlers there. They left one water bottle. I'm like, okay, that's, apparently y'all don't know how to count, but they never checked on the people who were standing there with their money. We could have walked out with at least $1,000 if we wanted, and they would have. They didn't know our names, unless our wrestler friend had given them our names, which I believe that did happen.
Well, they never called you by,
but they
name.
never called. So. Right? They didn't know who we were. And I'm pretty sure. If they watch this video, yes, they will see because this is the exact shirt I wore while I was there, because I'm always got to advertise.
Yes, sir.
Got to put the brand out there. In fact, I don't think I've washed the shirt since then either, but that's another
Oh
story.
no.
I just come to think of it. because I haven't worn it since then. So I
Yes, sir.
should have put it in the laundry, but that's my fault. So they could look and they go, oh, they could probably trace it back, but at the same time, I'm not going to make it easy for them.
Yep.
They could probably figure out who it was who actually, hooked us up. I don't know if I'm going to do another as far as working. My buddy, I think he's actually decided he's not going to. He's like, that was, he said the negative, because it was only, really a couple of negative incidents, but they were huge incidences.
Yeah, that's bad. That's bad. If you would have hauled off and slapped the hell out of one of these guys, then you'd be wrong, right?
Exactly.
So that was bad. Yeah.
And not only that, then they would have beat Steve up pretty bad.
Yeah,
because
I hear that. Yeah.
A lot of people, who think all wrestlers, they can't really fight. You want to give it a shot? Go ahead. Let me know how that works out for you.
Yep.
The whole FAFO that'll come into play real quick.
Sure.
Because, and especially this event, Haku wasn't there, but he's been there at past events. And you've heard the stories about Haku.
Yeah, no one is going to take him on. Yeah,
no one's going to take. And I've heard even Bobby himself is actually a shooter.
I believe it.
Yeah, so though, he's, if you look at him, he's very small. He's very frail, compared to like a lot of the other ones. But him being a shooter or a hooker or whatever you want to call it, he's not somebody really mess around with. But so
why does he have to push people around?
Exactly. Just come yelling at me.
If you are Johnny Badass, you don't need to convince me.
Exactly. That is exactly what I told my son the other day. Yeah. I said, true. Well, badasses don't have to tell you they are.
Oh, you'll know.
You'll know.
You'll know.
But for him to come yelling at me, and like you said, I'm like, I'm 50 years old. I'm a retired master sergeant out of the Air Force. And as far as like the organization, I actually told my wrestler friend, I said, if they need help, I said, I have an MBA. That's actually something else. Wow. I have an MBA. I could actually help them set this up. There's so many things that,
yeah.
And I said, because so they weren't even in contact with the wrestlers. They were definitely not in contact with the help, and they really needed help. But if they need it that bad now at their fifth show, if they've been treating everybody the same way, now a guy at another table close to me, he actually said he had actually worked every single show they'd had, and so he keeps going back. So I don't know if maybe he's just a glutton for punishment, or he's got a good enough relationship with them, maybe, but I'm like, I'm on the fence whether or not I want to do it again. But Dillon, he just put on Facebook, I think yesterday, the day before, that he's not going to be part of the events anymore.
Yeah, in all honesty, first of all, he said that on my show. He said at the end of the year, he was going to quote unquote retire from doing events in wrestling, which, okay. But putting up that post on Facebook saying effective immediately, he's taking time away from wrestling and all that stuff. I think that he either realizes he's going down the wrong trail in life, and he needs to separate himself from whatever is triggering him, that's putting him in these positions, or he anticipates some legal problems. And certainly, when you start harassing women to the point where they have to go and get restraining orders or threaten to do that, when you have people advertising, selling alcohol at events where they don't legally have the right to do that, yeah, you're probably going to find yourself in some legal jeopardy real soon, buddy. Again, Dillon, clean up your act. That's all I'll say to you, young man. Clean up your act. If that's how you treat your parent, you have no love for anybody, including yourself.
Exactly.
You can't respect them. You can't respect yourself. Clean up your act, bro. That's all I'll say to that,
So, and I know you actually have a hard stop in the next 5 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping this up. Because y'all don't get, Duke's a very, very busy man. So,
hey, listen, I'm trying to be like you, Steve.
well, you're setting your standards low then.
No.
But Duke is a very, very busy man, because I'm even looking behind him. I'm seeing the Fox Sports, because I know you do a lot of things with the community, and I know you do a lot of other sports casting, as well as the wrestling podcast. And this has actually been an honor from my end, for you to come on the show and actually talk about this, because this is a pretty big deal, and the fact that you actually chose to come on here, I'm like, all right, cool. So I must be doing something right to get the Duke on there, even though I do want to change your name to instead of Duke Loves Rasslin, call it Carolina Loves Rasslin, because I'm a big North Carolina fan. So, and I see the word Duke, and I'm like,
yep. See,
all right.
I'm putting you in conflict now. See,
so, it's just, but I'm like, what, but.
What is it that Bobby said on my show? You're walking on a trashy side of town now.
Something like that, yeah. And then saying, bottom feeder and things like
Bottom
that. And
feeder, Jerry Springer. Listen, Jerry Springer, you're welcome to come on my show. Since I'm going to be called you, I might as well have you on and really rub it in. So,
yeah,
I'm gonna make that happen next.
well, Jerry Springer, well, he's dead. So
Oh no.
yeah,
Oh no.
he died a few months ago.
Oh no.
Because
I
I
didn't
live
even know that.
yeah, because I live about 30 miles outside Cincinnati. He used to be the mayor of Cincinnati, and so they
That's
all,
right. That's right. Yeah.
yep, they all
Oh
talked about when
man.
he died, and but yeah, but if you could bring it back, I mean, Jerry Springer show used to be, you know,
Well, listen, if I'm being called a legend, then I'm in good company. So I'll take it. You
well,
know
there
what
you
I
go,
mean? I've been
exactly.
called worse in life, so that's okay.
But ladies and gentlemen, this is Duke Loves Rasslin. Yeah, definitely go check out his show. Like you said, he's on YouTube, but I mean, it is audio, but it is on YouTube, and you can check him on all the audio platforms. Thank you so much for coming on. You know, hopefully this gets to Dillon and he pays attention, but we'll see. I mean, because if somebody's going to be like that, then it's hard to make them stop. I mean, they didn't get like that overnight. They're not going to change overnight. And
That's right.
so,
And listen, Steve, before I go, I have to say this on behalf of the entire nation and all of our allies. Thank you for everything that you've done to keep us safe. We wouldn't be here today as free as we are without you and your comrades, your brothers in arms, making the sacrifices and doing all that you've done. So, seriously, thank you, thank you, thank you.
well, thank you for holding down the fort back home for us too. Thank you for being worthy of serving, because that's the thing. I mean, if you know, if it wasn't for thinking about all the people that I was, you know, that were back home that I was doing this for, you know, that also makes a difference. Just knowing that we had that support. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
And so, uh, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. So, like I said, go check out Duke Loves Rasslin. I want to have you back on the show again sometime, you know, because this has been a lot of fun, and you got to have me on one of your shows, one of your mini shows, and
Both shows.
you
Yeah,
know, oh yeah,
absolutely.
we got to hook that up. So
Yes,
it
sir.
sounds like fun. So, but until we can meet again, my friend, I'm just gonna say goodbye and God bless.
Take care.